biggest public prosecutor is still under the Department of Justice. The number of prosecutors that we have under the DOJ are simply probably 20 times more than the lawyers that they have.
What can the DOJ do that the other anti-corruption agencies cannot do?
Yun nga po, mas marami tayong piskal na po pwede mag-imbestiga. At aasistihan po ng ang ating mga piskal, ng kapulisan at ng NBI at ng yung ating opisino laban sa red tape, yung ating PA, yung Presidential Anti-Graft Commission. So marami pong aasiste at marami pong mga piskal na po pwede mag-conduct ng investigation kung ikukumpara po natin sa limitadong personnel ng Office of the Ombudsman.
Is the President's directive to the DOJ a reflection of his lack of satisfaction with the efforts of other agencies that are supposed to address corruption?
Hindi naman po siguro. Gusto lang talaga niya maiwang legacy na lininis niya ang gobyerno sa natitirang panahon ng kanyang termino.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Yusek. Punta tayo kay Joyce Balancho, please.
Yes, Secretary. Dun po sa utos ni Pangulong Duterte to investigate DPWH corruption, what is his timeline for this? Meron po ba siyang binigay na definite deadline to the mega task force that you mentioned para po magbigay ng report kay Pangulong Duterte?
Yesterday po was the deadline. He wants it as soon as possible.
Deadline po, sir, ng resulta ng investigation?
That's what I'm saying. I'm speaking figuratively, of course. He wants it done yesterday, which means it has to be done at the soonest time possible. He wants to see them behind bars para magsilbi pong halimbawa na mabawasan nga ang korupsyon dyan sa mga ahensya gaya ng DPWH, Customs at iba pa.
Alright. Sir, si President Duterte all praises kay DPWH Secretary Mark Villar will still be covered dito sa investigation ng DPWH kahit po nagpapahayag ng kumpiyansa ang Pangulo sa kanya.
Well, wala pong dahilan para magduda sa integridad si Presidente kay Secretary Villar, a view which I share and everyone in the cabinet share. Alam mo, unfortunately talaga, may kinalaman din talaga yung abilidad ng tao para matukso ng korupsyon. Pero kung ganitong kayaman naman kasi yung secretary at alam natin na very well educated in the best universities in the world, and meron ding untainted record as a public servant, having served as congressman also of Las Piñas, talaga naman pong he is beyond doubt, no? And is certainly above corruption in DPWH. So, ganyan po katindi ang tiwala ni Presidente, ang tiwala ko, at tiwala ng ibang gabinete kay Secretary Mark Villar.
So just to be categorical about it, hindi na po siya sasakupin ng investigation ng Mega Task Force?
Well, the President, of course, will leave it to the task force, pero ang opinion po ni Presidente ay malinaw, wala po namang bahid ng kahit anong korupsyon si Secretary Villar, which we all share in the cabinet.
Sir, dun sa PhilHealth, nabanggit ni Pangulo, hindi na niya bubuwagin, no? Yung PhilHealth. Does this mean na siya'y kontento na sa performance ni bagong PhilHealth President Dan Tigueran sa paglilinis sa korupsyon?
Let's just say, inaantay pa po niya yung mga kasong isasampa pa sa iba pang mga personnel at officials ng PhilHealth. No? Pero kumpiyansa po siya na dahil maraming ang nag-resign na at maraming na-suspend na, meron ng malaking pagbabago dyan sa PhilHealth. Malaki na po nagawa natin sa paglinis ng PhilHealth. Pagpapatuloy na lang po yan.
Last na lang po for me, Secretary. Maliban po dun sa recommendations na Metro Manila mayors, what were the other considerations ng IATF at ni Pangulong Duterte to still place Metro Manila under GCQ until end of November?
Well, malinaw po yan. No? Meron tayong daily attack rate, meron tayong 2-week average attack rate, meron tayong critical hospital utilization rate. Lahat po yan ay kinonsidera, pati ang mga social at economic factors. Sa Huwebes po or sa Lunes, depending on availability po of USEC ng DOH who is in charge of classification, USEC David, humingi po ako ng permiso at ginarant naman ako ng permiso ng IATF na ipipresenta po sa taong bayan itong mga datos na pinagbasihan po ng Interagency Task Force nang maintindihan naman po ng mga tao. Unang-una, nakabase po tayo sa siyensya at ito po ay a whole of nation approach. Hindi lang po 10 dalubhasa siguro po hindi bababa sa 100 dalubhasa ang nagtutulong-tulong para magbigay itong rekomendasyon nito at ipakita sa inyo na hindi po umaasa ang gobyerno ni Presidente Duterte sa kahit sinong ibang mga dalubhasa para gumawa ng ganitong desisyon. So mabuting balita po yan, pinayagan ako ng IETF na i-share po ang datos natin sa publiko na naging basihan ng rekomendasyon kay Presidente, pero gagawin po natin ito matapos po magdesisyon ng ating Presidente.
Thank you, Secretary
Thank
Roque.
you, Joyce. Punta na tayo kay Yusek Roque, please.
Secretary, question from Sam Edenilla of Business Mirror. Ang una niyang tanong, na-approve na po kaya ni President Duterte ang and release of budget release for Bayanihan 2 for at least 4 agencies? If no, kailan daw po ito marirelease?
Nako, mas mabuti pong ginawa ni Presidente. Binigyan niya po ng delegated authority si DBM Secretary Avisado para mag-approve na ng release. So hindi na po yan dadaan sa Office of the Executive Secretary. Alinsunod po dito, meron pong 7 departamento na marilisan ng pondo ngayon galing sa Bayanihan 2. Ito po ang DTI, 100 million for shared service facilities para sa Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa Program. Ang NDRRMF, 5 billion for augmentation of the NDRRMM Fund. Ang DOLE, 8 billion para sa Adjustment Measures Program and tulong panghanap buhay para sa ating displaced and disadvantaged workers. DSWD, 6 billion for assistance to individuals in crisis situation and sustainable livelihood program. Department of Agriculture, 11.632 billion for initial submission for plant program. DOH, 20.575 billion for health-related responses such as HRH, augmentation of DOH hospitals, specialist allowance, actual hazard duty pay, free life insurance, accommodation, transportation, and meals for health workers, and other compensation for public and private health workers. DOLE, 5.1 billion para po sa AKAP. At nag-release na rin po ng 500 million para sa funding requirements under the Local Government Support Fund out of a total appropriation of 1.5 billion. Lahat po yan na-release ng DBM today dahil hindi na po dadaan sa Office of the President, delegated na po si Secretary Wendell Avisado to approve the release of these amounts.
Second question po niya, nagkaroon na kaya ng decision ng IATF or si President Rodrigo Duterte regarding the proposed subsidy ng micro and small firms to help them pay the 13-month pay of their workers?
Malinaw na po yan, pinag-aralan, wala pong pagkukunan ng subsidy. So ang ginawa na lang po natin, dahil mandatory naman po talaga ang pagpayad ng 13-month pay, pautangin natin yung kinakailangan mangutang para mabayaran ang 13th month pay. Ang na-identify na natin dyan, ang mga rural banks at saka yung small business corporation na meron pong 10 bilyon. 6 na bilyon po dyan para sa mga tourism-related industries, yung 4 billion para sa mga iba pang mga small and medium enterprises. So, aasistihan po natin ang hindi makabayad dahil talaga namang naghirap tayo dahil sa pandemya. Pautangin po natin sila ng sa ganon, lahat po tayo ay magkaroon ng Merry Christmas. Joseph Morong. Joseph Morong. Okay, kung wala pa si Joseph, si Trisha muna. Trisha Tirada.
Hi, sir.
Yun na pala si Joseph. Yes,
Sorry,
Joseph.
nagka-problema yung signal.
Napuyat
Sir, yung
ka
sa
kagabi,
corruption
no?
lang, no?
Napuyat ka kagabi, no?
Oh, sir. Hindi, pati gumising na maaga. Anyway, sir, yung
Yun
sa
ang pinakaayaw mo,
corruption,
no? Yung gising sa umaga, no?
no, because we work late at night, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, first, yung sa corruption muna, no? Ang sabi ni Presidente is that, okay, he has a campaign promise of solving the corruption in 6 months. And then he said last night na parang, teka muna, mukhang hindi, walang nangyayari at lalong lumalala. So, sir, what made the President say this and what has been done or what has been in the last 4 years of his administration?
Alam mo, sabihin na lang natin na using his own personal standards, hindi satisfied si Pangulo sa paglinis sa gobyerno. At alam nyo, naging congressman naman itong si ating Pangulo, naging mayor din. So pag sinabi niyang may corruption sa DPWH, alam po niya ang sinasabi niya. No? It's really a systems problem, no? Na kinakailangan talagang tutukan. Nandyan po yung PhilHealth, no? Na at least sa administrasyon niya at ito ng mga kabalastugan naman sa PhilHealth, ilang presidente na rin ang dumaan dyan, no? At talagang yung mga sindikato dyan, napakalalim ng kanilang penetration. Ngayon po, isa-isa namang nawawala ng ugat yung mga mafia dyan, no? Yung mga malapit niyang mga kaibigan na merong whiff of corruption, sipa, tanggal, no? At kahit sino pa man sila, no? Tingin ko wala namang kaduda-duda na seryoso ang presidente. So ito po ay, kumbaga, leaving a legacy. At ang legacy niya talaga ipatunayan na kung talaga nang tututukan at gagamitin ng political will, talaga nang pong mababawasan ng korupsyon, bagamat aminado na tayo na hindi tuluyang mawawala ang korupsyon.
Sir, address lang to those who may not, probably believe the sincerity of this campaign. Kasi what can be done in 2 years that was not done in the last 4 years of his administration.
Ikaw naman, Joseph, 5% lang naman sila at kahit anong gawin ng presidente, hindi sila magiging satisfied. Hayaan na natin sila. They're entitled to their own opinion.
Okay. Sir, yun pong sa vaccine, no? Right now, ang fact is, walang cold chain storage facility ang Pilipinas. And it seems that we have to build that infrastructure from the ground up. So how much will that cost the government? Because we need that just in case China is ready to give or to distribute their own vaccine kung sila yung mauna. So how much will that cost the government? And we do not have a cold chain storage facility as of now, correct?
Well, perhaps our guests from the private sector can give us an estimate. And ito naman po ay shared cost ng private sector at ng gobyerno. Sir, can you give us an estimate kung magkano kakailanganin for the cold storage facilities for the entire nation?
So, I mean, if we look at it on a unit basis, let's just talk about a freezer itself by itself. So a freezer that can store, let's say, 40,000 doses at -70 degree, for example, that goes for around 10 to 15,000 US dollar per a deep freezer, right? And if we are trying to build a freezer farm, for example, then we're looking at 500 or so freezers of such specification. And how this happens is that this is just the cost of the equipment, and then there's other costs which is for the implementation and maintenance and so on. But I believe the most important part right now is that Philippines should procure the supply of these equipments before they run short, and then the prices will jack up naturally. So that's why I am here and I'm talking about this, so we are ready for this in advance, and not later when the prices, when the supply for these equipments is short, and then we'll have to pay a higher price for it.
Sir, in your own private company, how much are you allotting for acquiring these cold storage facilities, and for how many dosage are you targeting?
So at the moment, we are still in discussions with our partners as to the production capacity and the doses that we are bringing to the Philippines. And naturally, our scale will follow that. So there's no exact dollar or peso value that I have right now, but we're trying to maximize. So we'll be heavily invested in this, but there's no exact figures at the moment. We're still doing the mathematics for this.
Sir, may pera tayo for that?
Yes, pero naman po ang gobyerno.
Sir, konti lang kay Yusek Domingo and then one last for you later.
Okay.
Yusek Domingo, sir, paki-explain lang yung sa process, no, yung cold chain storage facility. So bakit kailangan ng ganun? Para lang malaman ng ating mga kababayan, and he said, dapat ma-procure na bago pa man magkaagawan ulit dun sa equipments, no? Can you explain the procedure? Bakit kailangan malamig yung paglalagyan ng bakuna? At kaya ba natin, sir, itong magawa until before April?
Kasi talaga ang bakuna po napaka-sensitive niya. No? Hindi siya parang gamot na tableta na maaring i-transport basta lamang. Each and every vaccine, depende po kung alin ang bibilihin natin, meron siyang temperature na set kung saan maaari lamang siya mag-store. In fact, each and every box, for example, ng vaccine, meron niyang indicator, no, na mag-change yung kulay niyan kapag lumagpas siya doon sa temperature na set. At halimbawa po, nakalagay ang vaccine na ito ay 2 to 8 degrees lamang siya dapat. Kapag nalagay po yan sa lugar na 10 degrees, biglang mag-change po ang kulay niyan at yung buong lote na yon hindi na pwedeng gamitin. Itatapon na yon, no? So, yung iba naman, minus 70 degrees. So each and every every box that you get will have an indicator to make sure that it has stayed within 9 to 70 degrees from the time it left the factory until it's brought to the pier, lagay sa container, na ilipat sa van ng DOH, na ilagay sa freezer ng DOH, at bago siya maibakuna. So every time na nagkaroon tayo ng break sa cold chain, you might lose the efficacy of a vaccine. Kaya very, very important po talaga na nakaset up na ito. At ito naman talaga ang ginagawa ng DOH ngayon to make sure that the cold chain is ready. In case bumili na tayo ng vaccine, to make sure that it is not broken and the integrity of the vaccine is intact from the time of production until it is actually used.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. Pero Yusek, meron akong follow-up question doon, no? Sa ngayon po, magkano capacity natin sa RITM, which I understand has a sub-zero capacity, and ilan pong delivery trucks ang meron tayo, just in case makakakuha tayo ng kaunting bakuna man lang?
Yun po sa RITM, meron po ang DOH dyan na vaccine facility. But it's enough for yung mga routine vaccinations natin. And we usually only vaccinate about 10 to 20 million people, children, kasi pang bata po. So yan po yung mga kayang hold niyan. At alam ko po na bumibili nga po sila ng mga truck na may cold storage capability. Pero sa ngayon po, wala pa po tayong nagre-rent po ang DOH every time na magta-transport po tayo ng mga ganitong mga bakuna. Pero alam ko po, nagpaplano na silang bumili para nga po din sa darating.
Sir, just one last point, please.
Sige na, go.
Secretary. Sir,
Go ahead.
meron lang ako natanggap na letter, no? I'm sure makaka-relate ka din dito. Yung sa SSS pensioner, this is a letter from a 79-year-old pensioner na hindi pa natatanggap yung, they were promised, she said, na 3,000 pension from the government, from President Duterte, pero natatanggap nila is 1,000. Sabi niya,
Nawala ka, Joseph. Nawala si Joseph. Joseph, yung letter na pinadala mo sa akin, I will forward it to the SSS president and will get back to you. Okay? Yusek Roque, please.
Okay, Secretary, question from Virgil Lopez ng GMA News Online. According to the Octa Research Group, without the testing facilities provided by the Philippine Red Cross, the government's isolation and quarantine and contact tracing programs are crippled because the LGUs do not know whether or not a person is infected with COVID-19 within the 24 to 48-hour time period required. What's the palace reaction to this? Will the government be able to resolve the impasse between PhilHealth and Philippine Red Cross soon?
We simply disagree po, no? Kasi hindi lang naman PNRC ang nagte-test. We have 115 licensed RT-PCR laboratories and 36 gene expert laboratories, no? So hindi po tayo nakasalalay sa iisang testing facility ng PNRC. We disagree po with Octa Research.
Second question niya, the Octa Research Group also said the easing of restrictions in public transportation will trigger an increase in new COVID-19 cases in the National Capital Region in the next 2 weeks. Did the government expect this scenario?
Again, we disagree po, no? Tingin ko po, epektibo po yung ating communication na si Presidente nang humingi sa lahat na mag-mask, maghugas at mag-iwas. At dyan naman po makikita ang galing ng Pilipino. Alam po nila na kinakailangan pag-ingatan ng kanilang buhay para sila po ay makapaghanap buhay. Again, we disagree with the research group. Tingin ko po, gagawin ng Pilipino ang lahat na dapat na gawin dahil importante sa kanila na makapaghanap buhay na muli. Pero papaalalahanan ko lang po sila yung mga dablubhasa po na nagrekomenda na bawasan ang social distancing, puro doktor po ito magagaling. Yung mga Dr. Cabral, mga Dr. Dairit, Dr. Mengita Padilla, and I'm sorry, no? Itong mga doktor po ito ay respetado. Hindi ko po alam kung sino yung doktor ng Octa Group, no? Ang sabi po nila, hindi naman dapat tumaas, miski bawasan ng spacing sa public transportation, basta susunod po sa 7 commandments. Ulitin ko po, anong 7 commandments? Kinakailangan may face mask, kinakailangan may face shield, kinakailangan no talking and no eating. Nako, bawal pala akong kumain at magsalita, no? Kinakailangan may adequate ventilation, kinakailangan frequent and proper disinfection, dapat walang asymptomatic passenger, at yung every other seat ay iobserbahan. Ito naman po ay base rin sa siyensya, no, na diniscuss po sa IATF ni Dr. Manolet Dairit, and I'm sorry, I believe them po. Trish Terada, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Secretary. Sir, yung related question po doon sa Philippine Red Cross, because yesterday you mentioned that the DOH is already talking to 8 private laboratories while Red Cross suspended its PhilHealth-funded testing. So si Senator Gordon po is saying na parang he has this impression na tinatakot daw sila when in fact, hindi naman daw sila negosyo, service-oriented po sila. And he shares kahit daw po gipit sila, they even reached out and did tests in Favela. Kumbaga the point is, they're demanding for payment so they can continue their operations. Hindi raw po puro pangako lang. Sir, how would you wish to respond to this?
Wala po kami tinatakot, but we have 115 PCR test facilities and 35 gene expert machines po. Kaya nga po natin in-improve ang ating testing capacity nang hindi tayo nakasalalay sa isang organisasyon lamang. Sa akin po, kung talagang hindi natin mapipilit ang PRC na bumalik, maski ang offer po ngayon ay 50% na babayaran, wala po tayong magagawa. Kinakailangan humanap po ng mga alternatibo. At yun lang naman pong ginagawa natin. Gumagawa tayo ng hakbang para tuluyan nating maasistihan ang ating mga kababayan. Wala po yung mga pananakot. Now, bukod pa po doon, yun nga po, no, yung 8 na nakikipag-usap na tayo mga pribadong mga laboratorio. Alam nyo naman po kasi, dahil sa mga pribado, negosyo po yan. Can you imagine po, kung ikaw ay negosyante, makakapasok ka sa airport, magkakaroon ka ng pagkakataon na i-test ang PCR test na dati-rate exclusive sa PNRC. So, of course, nag-uunahan po yung mga pribadong laboratorio na yan. Ang ating hinihingi lamang, dahil babayaran naman ito ng PhilHealth, dapat yung same rate na sinisingil ng PRC. Pero kakausapin po namin ngayon yung mga mas mababang sinisingil, yung NKTI, Philippine Children's Hospital, Lung Center at Perpetual Health. Baka dapat sila unang manguna sa airport at sa pantalan na mas mababa pa nga ang pupwedeng bayaran ng ating mga kababayan. 1,750 hanggang 2,000 lang po ang sinisingil ng mga testing labs na ito.
Secretary, sinasabi po ng PRC na apparently kompleto na po sila with all the documents, the auditing requirements. It's just that nagbabago-bago daw po yung kontrata. May chance po ba na mabayaran fully itong PRC?
Yan po yung opinion ng ang opinion po ng DOJ. They cannot make an opinion dahil nakabase po yan sa submission ng requirements at saka compliance with audit procedures.
Mm-hmm. Sir,
ang pakiusap lang naman po natin is garantyado na ng presidente na babayaran 100%. Ibibigay na ang 50%. Bakit naman hindi pa ituloy nga ang testing?
Mm-hmm. Sir, on another topic, may timeline po bang tinitignan si Pangulo doon sa creation ng Department of OFW? I understand he said soon, but is he eyeing kung first quarter of next year?
Sa lalong mabilis na panahon po, gusto ni Presidenteng mabuo yung departamento na yan at sigurado naman po ako na dahil dito, isa-certify as urgent yan ng mas mapabilis po ang pagpasa niyan bilang isang batas.
Thank you, Secretary. Salamat po.
Yusek Roque, please.
Secretary, question from Maricel Halili of TV5. Why is it necessary to direct DOJ to investigate corruption in the entire government given that the Ombudsman and other government agencies like PACC are already doing the job?
Nasagot ko na po yan. Mas marami pong mga tauhang gobyerno na nakatutok sa korupsyon, mas mabuti.
Second question niya, what's the assurance that there won't be an overlap on the mandate of the DOJ task force and other government agencies like PACC in the fight against corruption? How will the job of DOJ task force differ from other government agencies?
Itong mega task force po, iimbitahin po ang PACC, ang mga constitutional bodies kung gusto nilang sumapi, gaya ng kanilang partisipasyon doon sa task force PhilHealth. No? So wala naman po yung magiging overlap. Unang-una, mayroon pong MOA sa panig po ng Ombudsman at ng DOJ, no? Na po pwede naman po mag-imbestiga rin ang DOJ pagdating po sa mga kaso sa paglabag ng Anti-Corrupt and Graft Practices Act.
Question from Rose Novenario of Hataw. Ano daw po ang magiging papel ng PACC ngayong inatasan na ni Pangulong Duterte ang DOJ para magsiyasat sa korupsyon sa lahat ng ahensya ng gobyerno? Hindi ba siya kontento sa performance ng PACC?
Again po, fact-finding po ang PACC, makikipag-ugnayan po siya at sigurado po ako, kabahagi ang PACC nitong mega task force na ito. Okay, punta naman tayo kay MJ Blanca Flor ng Daily Tribune, please. MJ?
Good afternoon, Secretary.
Good afternoon.
Related question po ito tungkol dun sa multi-agency task force. Kasi po you mentioned about leaving a legacy. So people are probably wondering why did the president instruct the multi-agency task force only now? Bakit po hindi yung mga naunang years ng kanyang administration?
Well, kasi nga po, number one, yung gravity ng problema at pangalawa, yung karanasan natin sa Task Force PhilHealth na naging epektibo po kapag nagtutulong-tulungan ang iba't ibang sangay ng gobyerno. Hindi lang po sa ekotibo, kasama na po yung mga constitutional bodies, kagaya po ng Ombudsman, COA at ng Civil Service Commission.
And follow-up lang po, mangangailangan po ba ng separate budget itong task force na ito?
Lahat naman po yan ay nasa budget na po ng mga ekotibo, no? Ulitin ko po, yung mga constitutional bodies, they're just invited at nakikipagtulungan naman po sila. But of course, we respect their independence as found and provided for in our Constitution.
Okay po. And last question na lang po. The Congress po kasi is urging the Senate to fast-track the creation of, to pass the proposed measure creating the Department of Disaster Resilience. Secretary, I just want to ask, does the Palace remain confident na ito pong pet bill ng Pangulo ay mapapasa before his term ends?
I'm definitely po. We are very confident dahil lahat naman po ng liderato ng parehong kamara ng ating Kongreso ay malapit na aliado ng ating presidente. Thank you. Yusek Roque again. Thank you, MJ.
Thank you po.
Question from Lay Alvis of GMA7. Ano na po ang update sa mukahing lagyan ng price cap ang RT-PCR tests? Ang sabi po ng Department of Health ay isinumite na nila sa Office of the President ang proposal. May mga ulat na umaabot na sa 20,000 pesos ang mga rush PCR test na inaalok sa mga dumarating na OFW.
Ang masasabi ko lang po dyan ay yan po ay nakabinbin ngayon sa ating Office of the Executive Secretary, pero aanunsyo ko po, meron po mga murang RT-PCR thanks to Project ARC. Diyan po kami nagpapa-RT-PCR. Philippine Children's Medical Center, National Kidney Transplant Institute, Philippine Lung Center, Perpetual Health Hospital, 1,750 hanggang 2,000. Meron pa pong mga ibang branches sa iba't ibang parte ng Pilipinas. Sa susunod po, ifa-flash natin uli yan nang malaman ng taong bayan na hindi kinakailangan magbayad ng 23,000 dahil meron naman pong 1,750 hanggang 2,000 na PCR test.
Opo, Secretary, question mula po kay para po kay FDA, kay Sir Yusek Domingo, mula po kay Katrina Son ng GMA7. May nagsasagawa daw po ng COVID vaccine sa Makati at napuntahan na rin daw po nila ito. Ano po ang update tungkol dito?
Yung sa Roque, so may nabalita na may nagbebenta daw ng vaccines, may mga Chinese ads pa. Pumunta yung ating mga ahente doon last week. At nangako naman yung administrator nung facility na hindi daw po totoo. At in fact, naglabas din sila ng disclaimer. But of course, we're continuously monitoring at mukhang mapapadalas po ang ating inspection, no, doon sa facility na yon to make sure na hindi po nagbebenta or gumagamit at nag-administer ng unregistered na bakuna dito sa Pilipinas.
Thank you, Yusek. Thank you.
Yes, Melo Acuña, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. I just have 2 points for you. The President is bent on the creation of the Department of overseas Filipinos, do you think we have the luxury of time to marry all the mandates of the different government agencies from DFA, DOLE, OWA, POEA, and immigration so that everything will be on streamline, Mr. Secretary?
We're very confident po. Alam mo, we pioneered in the sending of manpower as a strategy for economic development sa panahon pa ni Blas Ople, no? Noong panahon pa ng martial law. So napakatindi na po ng ating kakayahan at eksperyensya pagdating dito. Kinakailangan lang po i-streamline. At sa kauna-unahang pagkakataon nga, ang sabi ni Presidente, kinakailangan magkaroon sila ng sariling departamento, may sariling kalihim, nang mabilis po ang pagbibigay ng benepisyo sa ating mga bagong bayani, ang ating mga OFWs.
Mr. Secretary, may bago na nga po bang chairperson ang Climate Change Commission?
Ay, hindi ko pa po alam. Ako naman po nag-aanunsyo niyan, no? Pero wala pa ako natatanggap pong papel.
Opo, para kay Yusek Domingo sana.
Okay, Yusek
magandang
Domingo.
hapon, Yusek. Good afternoon, Yusek. Nice seeing you. First, yung mga cold storage na isa sa ayos, hindi po kaya magkaproblema sapagkat hindi pa lahat ng bahagi ng bansa ay mayroong stable na kuryente. Number one. Number two, yun po kayang leksyon na natutuhan natin sa Dengvaxia, hindi na mauulit ngayon. Salamat po.
So una po yung sa pangalawang tanong nyo, no? In fact, naglagay po sa batas natin dito sa Bayanihan 2, na bago tayo magbakuna, kailangan po merong preparation. May community preparation, kailangan po magpa-pilot muna sa isang lugar para makita ang mga problema and to make sure the community is informed. Pangatlo po, dapat very strict ang monitoring natin ng adverse events. Para po pag may makita tayo, ma-pause natin agad, maimbestigahan agad, at kailangan itigil agad or ituloy agad kung wala namang po problema. So yun po, sa batas po sa Bayanihan 2 nakalagay mga safeguards natin to make sure that once we launch a new vaccination program, this is a new vaccine, na lahat po ng safeguards ay nandoon. Yun naman pong sa cold chain, totoo po yun, napaka-challenging po talaga ng cold chains, lalo na po depende kung ano ang bakunang mabibili natin at kung anong temperature siya kailangan. Karamihan naman po ng mga transport vehicles ay ano po yan, mga self-contained naman, no? Meron po siyang power generator. Pero ang problema po talaga sa lugar na malayo. Kailangan po, aside from that, meron pa pong portable na mga, yung po dinadala po ng mga barangay health worker, no? Para maliliit na freezer to make sure na ma-maintain siya. Kasi pag bumaba po ang temperature, umiiksi po yung shelf life ng vaccine. No? Maaari pong maging invest na 3 months, magiging 1 week na lamang at magamit siya sa agad. But it will really have to do with planning and yun pong logistics, yung pong cold chain natin, management. At magagawa naman po yan, kailangan pagplanuhan lang po talaga ng mabuti.
Maraming salamat po, Yusek. Thank you, Secretary Hali.
Thank you, Melo. Back to you, Roque, please.
Yes, Secretary, question from Vance Fernandez ng Police Files about the recent purchasing of the Department of Education ng 254 units of Mitsubishi Strada. The question now arises, was the expensive amount of vehicles and was it possible for a rediversion of funds for more immediate concerns such as our blended learning programs? And I know sinabi mo po na budget for that ay inaprubahan na before. And why unexpensive vehicles may mas cheaper naman? And one thing more, na napapabayaan umano ng DepEd yung mga guro sa mga liblib na lalawigan na kailangan ng mga gamit para sa pagtuturo sa online learning.
Well, Vance, unang-una, no, 2019 budget yan. Yung kanilang need was assessed as early as 2016. At ngayon po, kailangan po talaga ng DepEd yan dahil nga po kinakailangan i-deliver ang mga modules sa mga malalayong lugar all over the Philippines. So, bakit po yan ang brand? Yan po yung nanalo sa bidding. Talaga naman pong lahat ng government procurement, dumadaan po yan sa public bidding. At yan po yung pinakamababang responsive bid na nakuha ng DepEd. Alam nyo, Vance, ultimately, it's a matter of trusting the head of office. I trust, the President trusts, and the entire Filipino nation trusts Professor Emeritus Leonor Briones. Number one, kasangga po natin siya, laban po sa korupsyon. Patuloy po natin pagtitiwala kay Professor Briones.
Last question dito para sa akin, Mr. Secretary. Spokes from Tina Mendez ng Philippine Star. Please clarify if President Duterte's order to DOJ would include investigation of alleged corruption in Congress, LGU politicians.
Well, alam niyo po, ang mandato po ng DOJ ayon sa batas na bumuo ng National Prosecutor's Office is to investigate everyone. Pero meron din po tayong mga immunities na ini-enjoy ang ating mga elected members of Congress and the Senate, pero it is not for violating anti-graft laws. So kasama po ang lahat po ng mga public officers despite the separation of powers dahil wala naman pong separate na ahensya na nag-iimbestiga ng korupsyon sa Kongreso mismo. Yan po ay kapangyarihan ng ehekutibo to implement the all laws kahit sino pa man sila.
Thank you.
Okay, last question from Pia Ranada, please.
Good afternoon, Sec. Sir, I'll go first to you, and then my last two questions will be for FDA Chief Eric Domingo. Sir, the President yesterday mentioned yung kanyang commitment against corruption. But sir, a lot of critics naman are pointing out that these sound hollow because the President himself is yet to reveal his SALN, which many transparency watchdogs say is an important document for government transparency. So, sir, how does Malacañang reconcile this, and why isn't this a contradiction?
We've actually discussed this before in this press briefing. Just comply with the steps required by the Ombudsman. We also have to respect the guidelines of the Ombudsman.
But sir, kasi the Ombudsman rules say that it's actually up to the President to release it. It's his, kumbaga, the ball is in his court. The Ombudsman gives him the right to say yes or no to releasing it. So why has the President not yet given his go signal for Malacañang or the Ombudsman to release his
As
SALN?
far as I know, there's not been any written requests for the President's SALN. Perhaps you should submit one.
Yes, sir, we've submitted several times. But they always tell us the Ombudsman is to issue the SALN. But the Ombudsman naman says wala pang go signal for Malacañang.
Well, I haven't seen any of your written communication, no? But again, our answer is it's a constitutional body. Let's respect guidelines issued by that office.
But sir, why the change in policy? Because in the previous 30 years, every president except for Duterte has issued their SALN.
Well, I do not know that we have changed policies. It is the Ombudsman that has changed the policy of who and under what circumstance anyone can ask for these SALNs.
Okay, sige. Going on to FDA Chief Eric Domingo, if it's okay.
Yes, please. One question more.
One question lang. Sir.
Go ahead.
But,
go ahead.
Sir, the first question on Sputnik V, sir, the Gamaleya Institute has supposedly given a CDA as early as August 25. It's now 2 months. Sir, have there been any problems encountered by the vaccine expert panel? Did they have to request for additional documents? And basically, what's the status, sir, of Sputnik V?
Yeah, from the last meeting with the vaccine expert panel, they're still getting more information. Kasi when Gamaleya approached us, nasa phase 2 trials pa lang sila and preparing for phase 3 trial. I think they're committed to continue with the phase 3 trial here. However, the vaccine expert panel still asking for some more documents and for some more information before they can make a full assessment of the proposal to do a clinical trial here.
So, sir, the information given initially was incomplete. Can we just get an idea of what kind of additional information the experts want from Gamaleya?
Usually, kasi the vaccine expert panel looks at the phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial results. So baka hindi pa completed yung mga phase 2 clinical trial. This is my my assumption is that they're waiting for more details on clinical trial results than previous to the clinical trial phase 3. Kung meron pang hinihintay na, hindi ko eksakto alam po anong documents yun. But I'm sure it has to do with the phase 1 and phase 2 trials.
Is it correct, sir, to say that the Sputnik V assessment by the government is delayed?
No, I don't think it's delayed because the vaccine expert panel actually works quite quickly. No, once all documents are complete, they can do an assessment in 1 week. Because I've seen it now with the other applicants. So they're just waiting for more information to make a complete assessment.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pia. Great hairdo. please stay in the news profession. Don't enter showbiz. Okay? Kung wala na pong tanong, I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Domingo and Mr. Adhil. Thank you very much. I hope, Mr. Adhil, we can ask you again to be our guest with the flowchart para maintindihan po talaga ng taong bayan kung ano yung logistics involved. Thank you to the men and women of the Malacañang Press Corps as usual. Inaayos na po natin yung live, ano tawag doon? Remote press briefing natin with the President. And thank you, of course, to Yusek Roque. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in today's press briefing. Until Thursday, where we will be conducting our press briefing in Panglao, Bohol. Ito po ang inyong spokeshari Roque nagsasabi, Philippines, konting tulog na lang, we will heal as one. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.